U.S. Supreme Court reached a decision today in a Portland man's challenge to his former placement on the no-fly list.
Yeah, Fox 12's Investigates team has been tracking this case since the beginning. Adrian Thomas now live with us in the studio with the new developments. Adrian.
Well, Pete, Riel, for months we've been following Portland man Jonas Fikre's case in the Supreme Court. This case over a decade in the making after Fikre found out he was put on the no-fly list with no notice or explanation after a business trip to Sudan. He subsequently filed a lawsuit against the FBI. With today's Supreme Court ruling, Fikre's lawsuit can now move forward. The 9 Supreme Court justices have unanimously decided that the federal government has not demonstrated that a man's no-fly list lawsuit is moot, meaning the case can now move forward. It began back in 2010 when a Portland man, Jonas Fikre, learned he was placed on the list and was kept out of the U.S. for years. Back then, FBI agents tried to get him to become a government informant, but he refused. He was then arrested, imprisoned, and tortured in the United Arab Emirates. Fikre later claimed his placement on the no-fly list was not lawful, and he sued the FBI. Years later, in 2016, he was removed from the list. Then the government tried to have the case dismissed. But the High Court found that the government has failed to show that the case is moot. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote in the court's opinion, put simply, the government's sparse declaration falls short of demonstrating that it cannot reasonably be expected to do again in the future what it is alleged to have done in the past. But he did note that the ruling is provisional and wrote that just because the government hasn't demonstrated that the case is moot does not mean it will never be able to do so. While today's court ruling was unanimous, Justices Samuel Alito and Brett Kavanaugh wrote in a concurring opinion to clarify some details. The justices wrote, by today's ruling, the Supreme Court is in no way suggesting classified information about the no-fly list that could jeopardize national security be shared in future court proceedings about the case. In studio, Adrian Thomas, Fox 12 Oregon.
All right.